I was standing in my marble foyer, 3 hours after Trevor's wedding reception ended, when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Courtney, my new daughter-in-law, in a business suit instead of her wedding dress. Behind her stood a stern-faced notary and two moving company workers. She held up legal documents and announced they had sold my house. I had 72 hours to vacate. The notary nodded confirmation. I just smiled, which seemed to confuse them completely. Courtney pushed past me into the foyer, her heels clicking against the Italian marble I had installed 30 years ago. The movers followed with empty boxes, looking uncomfortable. The notary, a thin man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses, carried a leather portfolio stuffed with papers. "Dante, we need you to step aside," Courtney said, waving the documents in my face. "These movers have work to do, and you're wasting everyone's time." I looked at my son's bride of exactly 6 hours and felt my stomach tighten. She was 31 years old, blonde, fit, and wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost $2,000. During the wedding reception, she had been all smiles and warm embraces. Now her blue eyes were cold as January ice. "What exactly are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She thrust the papers toward me. "Trevor signed over power of attorney to me 4 months ago, during our engagement. As his legal representative, I executed the sale of this property 1 week ago. The transaction closed yesterday. You have until Monday at noon to remove your personal belongings." I took the papers and examined them. My hands stayed steady, though my heart was racing. The documents looked official. Signatures, notary seals, county recorder stamps, a sales contract for $18,200,000. The buyer was listed as Coastal Holdings, LLC. "I'm a real estate attorney," Courtney continued, folding her arms. "I met Trevor at a property law conference in San Diego 18 months ago. I know exactly what I'm doing. This sale is completely legal." The notary cleared his throat. "Sir, I verified all signatures myself. Everything is in order." I looked at the cashier's check paperwork clipped to the back of the contract. It was made out to Trevor Castellano and Courtney Castellano, already using my son's last name for financial documents. "Community property laws in California are very clear," Courtney said with a tight smile. "What's Trevor's is mine now. We researched this extensively. There's a legal framework that allows this transaction." I folded the papers carefully and handed them back to her. "Would you mind coming into my study? I think we should discuss this properly." Courtney glanced at the notary, who shrugged. "Fine. 5 minutes. Then the movers start working." I led them through the house, past the living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Newport Beach, past the dining room where we had hosted Trevor's rehearsal dinner just 2 nights ago. My study was at the back of the house, lined with mahogany bookshelves and anchored by a massive oak desk. I walked to the desk and unlocked the bottom drawer with a key I kept on my personal keychain. From it, I pulled out a thick manila folder with a red label marked Estate Documents. "The problem with your plan," I said, opening the folder on the desk, "is that this house isn't actually in my name." Courtney's confident expression flickered. "Just for a second. This property has been held in an irrevocable trust for 23 years, I continued, pulling out documents with official seals and signatures. "The trustee is my attorney, Bernard Shaw. He's managed this trust since 2002. I spread the papers across the desk. Trust agreements, property deeds, beneficiary designations, all notarized, all recorded with the county. "Trevor was never listed as beneficiary or co-owner," I said, meeting Courtney's eyes. "He has no legal claim to this property. Never did." The notary stepped forward and examined the documents. His face went pale. "These appear to be legitimate." Courtney snatched the papers from him. Her jaw clenched as she scanned them. Then, slowly, her expression changed from shock to something else. "Calculation. Interesting," she said, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through something, then showed me the screen. "We anticipated this possibility." My blood went cold as I read the document on her phone. It was a court filing, dated 6 months ago. Trevor Castellano versus the Dante Castellano Family Trust. A legal challenge claiming undue influence and mental incompetence. Trevor filed this in February, Courtney said. He argued that you pressured him when he was younger, that you manipulated the trust structure to maintain control. He also suggested you might be experiencing cognitive decline. That's absurd, I said. But my voice had lost its steadiness. Is it? Courtney pulled up another document. We had you evaluated by a clinical psychologist, Dr. Patricia Harding. She wrote a comprehensive report about your mental state. I never saw any psychologist, I said. Not formally. But you had dinner with her. Remember that evening in March? Trevor's friend Patricia, the doctor with the thriving practice in Laguna Beach? Courtney smiled. She was evaluating you the entire evening. Every conversation, every story you told, every moment of confusion or repetition. She documented everything. I remembered that dinner. A pleasant evening at a beachfront restaurant. Trevor had introduced Patricia as a colleague he wanted me to meet. We had talked about sailing, about wine, about travel. I thought it was just a social occasion. Her report indicates early-stage dementia, Courtney said. Memory lapses, confusion, poor judgment. Combined with Trevor's affidavit supporting these observations, we convinced a probate judge to grant a preliminary hearing. When? I asked. Day after tomorrow. Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock. If we win, and we will, the trust gets dissolved immediately. The property transfers to Trevor as your sole heir. She stepped closer. And what's Trevor's is mine. The notary was backing toward the door. The movers had disappeared. It was just me and Courtney now, facing each other across my desk. You planned this from the beginning, I said quietly. I married your son for love, Courtney replied. The $18 million house is just a bonus. Then she smiled, victorious and cruel, and I felt my calm facade crack for the first time. I stood there after Courtney left, staring at the trust documents spread across my desk. My hands were shaking now. I heard the front door slam, heard the moving truck pull away. The house fell silent, except for the distant sound of waves against the shore. I grabbed my phone and called Bernard Shaw. He answered on the second ring. Dante? How was the wedding? Bernard, I need you to come over immediately. We have a serious problem. 30 minutes later, my attorney sat in my study, reading through the court filing Courtney had shown me. Bernard was 72 years old, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. We had known each other for 40 years. He looked up from the papers with genuine shock on his face. I knew nothing about this, he said. How is that possible? I'm the trustee. They filed in a different county, I said. Orange County Superior Court. Not here in Newport Beach. They deliberately avoided your notice. Bernard pulled out his laptop and started typing. This is bad, Dante. Very bad. A preliminary hearing means they already convinced a judge there's enough evidence to proceed. The burden of proof shifts to us. What about Dr. Harding's report? It's completely fabricated. Can you prove that? Did you record the dinner conversation? Do you have witnesses who can testify you showed no signs of confusion? I shook my head. It was just the four of us. Trevor, Courtney, this doctor, and me. And Trevor will support their version, Bernard said grimly. He looked at his watch. It's Friday evening, 7:15. The hearing is Wednesday morning. We need to get you a comprehensive medical evaluation immediately. Neurological and psychological. Full battery of tests. On a weekend? I'll make calls. Bernard was already dialing. We need documented proof that your mental capacity is perfect. If we walk into that courtroom without it, the judge will rule against us, based on Dr. 1, Harding's report. Over the next 2 hours, Bernard made 17 phone calls. Most went to voicemail. The few doctors who answered said they couldn't schedule comprehensive evaluations on such short notice. Finally, at 9:30, he found someone. Dr. Marcus Webb, Bernard said, hanging up. Neurologist at Hoag Hospital. He's willing to see you tomorrow afternoon at 2. It'll be a 4-hour evaluation. If we're lucky, we can get the results notarized by evening. Thank you, I said, feeling some relief. Don't thank me yet. We're playing defense here, and they've had months to prepare. Bernard closed his laptop. Tell me about Trevor. How did this happen? I walked to the window. The ocean was dark beyond the glass. His mother died 12 years ago. Cancer. Maria was the center of our family. After she passed, it was just Trevor and me. We were close. Or I thought we were. When did Courtney enter the picture? Trevor said they met at a conference 18 months ago. Now, I'm not sure that's true. She clearly knew about this property, knew about the trust structure, knew exactly how to attack it. Real estate attorney, you said? That's what she claims. Bernard was quiet for a moment. Dante, if they win this hearing, you lose everything. The trust will be dissolved. The property transfers to Trevor, and he's married to her. Community property laws mean she gets half of everything. Even if Trevor wanted to protect you, which it sounds like he doesn't, she has legal rights now. A knock at the door made us both jump. I walked through the house and looked through the peephole. Trevor stood on the front steps, swaying slightly. I opened the door. My son looked terrible. His tuxedo shirt was untucked, his bow tie hung loose around his neck, and his eyes were unfocused. He had been drinking heavily. "Dad," he said, his voice slurred. "We need to talk." "Come on," I said quietly. Trevor stumbled into the foyer. He saw Bernard standing in the hallway, and his expression changed from apologetic to defensive. "What's he doing here?" Trevor asked. "Your wife just tried to evict me from my own house," I said. "Bernard is helping me understand the legal situation." Trevor ran his hands through his hair. "Look, it's not supposed to be like this. Courtney said we were just going to share the house. All three of us. She said you'd be happy to have us here." "Trevor, sit down." We went into the living room. Trevor collapsed onto the leather sofa. I sat across from him, studying my son's face. He was 34 years old, tall and lean like his mother had been. He had Maria's green eyes and her gentle mouth. Right now, those eyes were filled with alcohol and something else. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. She showed me the trust challenge paperwork, I said. "You filed a claim that I'm mentally incompetent." "Dad, I didn't want to do that. But Courtney explained how much money I'm losing every year by waiting for my inheritance. This house is worth $18 million. If it's just sitting here, doing nothing, while you're getting older and I'm struggling to pay my rent on a 2-bedroom apartment in Costa Mesa." "You're struggling financially?" "I make $75,000 a year as a software engineer. That sounds good until you realize rent is $3,000 a month. Student loans are $800. Car payment is $550. Courtney showed me the numbers. She made me see how I'm being cheated. "Cheated by your own father?" Trevor looked away. "She said you're hoarding wealth that should be mine. That you're being selfish by keeping everything tied up in a trust I can't access." "The trust was designed to protect you," I said. "After your mother died, I wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of if anything happened to me. The property generates rental income from the guest houses on the lot. That income funds your trust distribution. You receive $2,000 a month." $2,000 a month from an $18 million asset. Trevor's voice rose. "That's an insulting return on investment." Courtney calculated that if I owned this property free and clear, I could sell it and invest the money. $18 million at 6% annual return would generate over $1 million a year. But instead, I get $24,000. "You're keeping me poor, Dad." I felt like I had been punched. "Trevor, that money is yours when you're older, when you have the maturity and experience to manage wealth responsibly. Right now, at 34, you still have time to build your career and your life." "I'm tired of waiting," Trevor said. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his expression changed completely. "I have to go," he said, standing up abruptly. "Trevor, wait. We need to talk about this." He was already walking toward the door. "There's nothing to talk about. Courtney said you'd try to manipulate me. She warned me you'd use emotional arguments instead of logic." "Your wife is trying to steal my house," I said, following him. "Our house. The house where you grew up, where your mother lived, where we scattered her ashes in the garden." Trevor stopped at the door. For a moment, I thought I had reached him. Then he turned and looked at me with eyes that were suddenly cold and calculating. "Courtney promised me $10 million after the sale goes through," he said flatly. "Half the proceeds. I don't care about you anymore. You're old, and you're going to die soon anyway. I deserve this money now. Not 20 years from now when you finally decide to let go." "Trevor, She showed me the math, Dad. Every year I wait is a year of lost earnings. Every year this house sits here is money that could be growing in investments. You're being selfish and controlling. Just like Courtney said. Your mother would be heartbroken to hear you talk like this. My mother is dead, Trevor said harshly. And you used her insurance money to create a trust that keeps me dependent on your approval. Well, I'm done being your obedient son. I'm taking what's mine. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. I stood in the foyer, alone again. Bernard appeared from the living room, his face gray. That was worse than the legal threat, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Dante. I couldn't speak. My only child, the boy I had raised and loved and supported through everything, had just told me he didn't care if I lived or died, as long as he got his money. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about the complete destruction of my family. Saturday morning arrived with fog rolling in from the ocean. I had not slept. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, and watching the gray mist obscure the world outside my windows. At 8 o'clock, I started making phone calls. I needed to find medical professionals who could evaluate me before Wednesday's hearing. Bernard had arranged Dr. Webb for this afternoon, but I wanted multiple opinions. I wanted overwhelming evidence that my mind was sharp. I called every neurologist in Orange County. Most offices were closed for the weekend. The few answering services I reached told me the doctors were unavailable. One receptionist laughed when I explained I needed a comprehensive evaluation by Monday. Sir, those evaluations are scheduled weeks in advance, she said. There's no way. I hung up and tried another number. By noon, I had made 37 calls. Only Dr. Webb's appointment remained confirmed. I arrived at his office at 2 o'clock. The building was mostly empty on Saturday, just a few medical suites with weekend hours. Dr. Marcus Webb was 55 years old, with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. He spent 4 hours putting me through every cognitive test imaginable: memory recall, pattern recognition, problem solving, spatial reasoning, vocabulary, mathematics. He asked me to draw clocks, to repeat sequences of numbers, to identify objects and remember lists. He conducted a physical neurological exam, checking my reflexes, my coordination, my vision. At 6:15, he sat down across from me with the results. Mr. Castellano, your cognitive function is exceptional, he said. Your memory is better than most people half your age. Your reasoning skills are sharp. Your verbal abilities are in the 98th percentile. There is absolutely no indication of any cognitive decline whatsoever. Relief flooded through me. Can you write a report? Of course. I'll have it ready within the hour. Dr. Webb typed up a comprehensive evaluation, 12 pages of test results, observations, and conclusions. His final statement was clear and unequivocal. Dante Castellano shows no signs of dementia, cognitive impairment, or diminished mental capacity. He is fully competent to manage his affairs. We found a notary public at a 24-hour business center. By 7:30 Saturday evening, I had an official, notarized document refuting everything Dr. Harding had claimed. I called Bernard with the good news. He sounded cautiously optimistic. This is excellent, he said. But be prepared for them to attack Dr. Webb's credibility. They'll claim he was biased, that you paid him to write a favorable report, anything to discredit him. Can they do that? In court, they can try anything. I went home feeling like I had solved the problem. I had my evidence. I had proof of my competence. Surely the judge would see the truth. Sunday morning, I was woken by pounding on my front door. I looked at my clock. 8:15. I pulled on a robe and went downstairs. 2 police officers stood on my doorstep. Behind them, 2 police cruisers were parked in my driveway. Dante Castellano? One officer asked. Yes? We have a warrant for your arrest. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. What? What are you talking about? You're being charged with elder abuse and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. I barely heard the rest of the Miranda warning. They handcuffed me in my own doorway, still wearing my robe and pajamas. Neighbors were starting to emerge from their houses, watching the spectacle. What is this about? I asked as they led me to the cruiser. A complaint was filed by Courtney Castellano, the officer said. She alleges you attempted to forge medical documents and threatened a doctor into writing a false report. There are text messages from your phone offering payment for favorable test results. That's insane. I never sent any text messages. You can explain everything at the station, sir. They put me in the back of the police car. I watched my house recede as we drove away, thinking this had to be a nightmare. It couldn't be real. At the county jail, they processed me. Fingerprints, photographs, personal property inventory. They gave me orange scrubs to wear and put me in a holding cell with 3 other men. One was sleeping off a drunk and disorderly charge. Another kept muttering to himself about conspiracy theories. The third ignored everyone. I sat on the concrete bench and tried to understand what had happened. Text messages from my phone? I pulled out the Messages app on my phone earlier to check something, and there had been nothing unusual. How could Courtney have fabricated text messages? Then I remembered Trevor had access to my phone occasionally. He knew my passcode. He had borrowed my phone before when his battery died. Could he have cloned it somehow? Could Courtney's technical expertise extend to digital fraud? Hours passed. The holding cell was cold and smelled of disinfectant and human misery. I watched other prisoners come and go. Some were released after posting bail. Others were transferred to other facilities. I waited. Finally, at 4:30 in the afternoon, a guard called my name. Bernard Shaw stood in the processing area, looking furious. I posted bail, he said. Let's get you out of here. Outside, Bernard's car was parked in the police lot. We got in, and he immediately started talking. This is a disaster, Dante. An absolute disaster. The arrest is public record now. Courtney has already released a statement to the media. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a news article from a local Orange County website. The headline read, "Local man arrested for elder abuse and fraud after alleged attempt to forge medical records." The article quoted Courtney extensively. She painted a picture of a desperate, mentally declining father trying to maintain control over assets he could no longer manage properly. Trevor was quoted too, saying he was heartbroken by his father's deterioration and was only trying to protect the family's interests. They're controlling the narrative, Bernard said. And now we have an active criminal case on top of the trust challenge. The probate judge for Wednesday's hearing has been informed of the arrest. Do you understand what this means? It makes me look guilty. It makes you look exactly the way they've been portraying you. Erratic, irrational, poor judgment, desperate. The arrest proves their case for them. We drove back to my house in silence. When we arrived, I saw reporters camped outside my gate. Bernard drove past them, into my garage, and we entered through the interior door. What do we do? I asked. I'm working on it. I've contacted the district attorney's office about the fraud charges. Dr. Webb confirmed he received no threatening texts from you, but they have evidence on their side. Fake evidence, yes, but evidence nonetheless. Can we trace where the texts came from? I have a forensic tech person looking into it. But that takes time. The hearing is Wednesday morning. The criminal trial will be months away. Bernard pulled out his laptop and started making notes. We need to prepare for the worst-case scenario. If Judge Moreland rules against us on Wednesday, the trust dissolves, and Trevor gets the property. Even if we eventually prove the criminal charges are false, even if we prove Courtney fabricated everything, by then the house will be sold and the money will be gone. Can they really move that fast? With power of attorney and a court order dissolving the trust? Yes. They could have the property on the market by Thursday. I sat down heavily on my couch. Everything was falling apart. The legal system that was supposed to protect me was being turned into a weapon against me. That night, just after 11 o'clock, I received an email on my laptop. The sender was anonymous, a string of random numbers and letters. The subject line read, "You need to see this." I opened it cautiously. Inside was a video file. I clicked play. The video showed Courtney and Trevor sitting in a restaurant. The quality was grainy but clear enough. The date stamp in the corner read June 14th, 2 years ago, long before Trevor claimed they met at a conference. I turned up the volume. The old man has no idea, Courtney was saying, leaning across the table. I've researched the property records. The house is worth at least 17 million, probably more. If we play this right, we can have it within 2 years. Trevor looked nervous. He's my father. I don't know if I can do this. You want to spend your whole life poor while he sits on a fortune? Look at these photos. Courtney spread papers on the table. I could see aerial shots of my property, assessment records, financial statements. This is your inheritance. He's keeping it from you with this trust nonsense. I can break the trust, Trevor. That's what I do. I specialize in estate law. I know every loophole. What if he fights back? He's 63 years old. We'll outlast him. And if we need to speed things up? She trailed off meaningfully. The video ended. I sat staring at my laptop screen, my heart racing. This was proof. Absolute proof that Courtney had planned everything from the beginning. Trevor was complicit. They had been scheming for 2 years. I immediately clicked reply, typing frantically. Who are you? I need this evidence for court. I hit send and waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Then my laptop screen went black. Not off. Black. Like something had taken control. Words appeared in white text. Evidence deleted. This was your warning. My laptop screen flickered and rebooted. When it came back up, my email program was empty. The inbox showed no messages. The anonymous email was gone. The video was gone. Everything. I frantically checked my deleted items folder. Empty. Checked my hard drive. The video file wasn't anywhere. Someone had remotely accessed my computer and erased everything. I grabbed my phone to call Bernard, but then I stopped. If they could clone my phone, if they could access my computer, what else were they monitoring? Was anything secure? I sat in my study, in the dark, feeling more alone and vulnerable than I ever had in my life. Someone had sent me proof of the conspiracy, then immediately deleted it. Was it Courtney playing psychological games? Was it someone trying to help me but lacking the courage to follow through? I had no answers. And Wednesday morning was less than 48 hours away. Wednesday morning arrived. Cold and overcast. I put on my best suit, dark blue with a burgundy tie. Bernard met me at the courthouse at 8:30. We walked through security together, neither of us speaking much. The probate court was in Santa Ana, a 40-minute drive from Newport Beach. The building was modern concrete and glass, filled with people dealing with inheritances, estates, guardianships, life and death reduced to paperwork and legal arguments. Courtroom 6 was on the 3rd floor. We entered at 8:50. The room was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Judge Patricia Moreland's bench dominated the front of the room. Courtney sat at the plaintiff's table with 3 attorneys in expensive suits. I recognized the law firm name from the business cards they had arranged in a neat row. Morrison, Fletcher, and Associates. One of Orange County's most prestigious firms. Trevor sat in the first row of the gallery, wearing a dark suit and looking appropriately concerned. When I entered, he didn't meet my eyes. There were reporters in the back rows. The arrest had generated enough publicity that local media was covering the hearing. At exactly 9 o'clock, Judge Patricia Moreland entered from her chambers. She was in her late 50s, with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun and sharp features. She looked efficient and no nonsense. "All rise," the bailiff announced. We stood. The judge took her seat and reviewed her notes for a moment before looking up. "This is case number PR-2025-4487, Trevor Castellano versus the Dante Castellano Family Trust. We're here for a preliminary hearing regarding a challenge to the trust's validity. Counsel, are you ready to proceed?" "Ready, Your Honor," said the lead attorney for Courtney's side. His name was Douglas Fletcher, founding partner of the firm. He was 60 years old and looked like he had never lost a case. "Ready, Your Honor," Bernard said. "Mr. Fletcher, you may present your argument." Douglas Fletcher stood and approached the judge. He was tall and commanding, with a voice that filled the courtroom. "Your Honor, this is a tragic case of an elderly man unable to accept his own cognitive decline. My client, Trevor Castellano, is the only son of Dante Castellano. 23 years ago, when Trevor was just 11 years old, Mr. Castellano created an irrevocable trust placing his primary asset, a property now valued at $18 million, beyond Trevor's reach. Fletcher pulled up a display on the courtroom screen. It showed the trust documents, the property assessments, the beneficiary structure. The trust was supposedly created to protect Trevor's interests, but in reality, it maintains absolute control in Mr. Castellano's hands through his appointed trustee. Trevor receives a pittance of $2,000 per month from a property generating far more income. Meanwhile, Mr. Castellano makes questionable financial decisions and shows clear signs of diminished capacity. He clicked to another slide. This one showed Dr. Patricia Harding's report. Dr. Harding, a respected clinical psychologist with over 20 years of experience, conducted an evaluation of Mr. Castellano this past March. Her findings are deeply concerning. Memory lapses, repeated stories, confusion about dates and events. These are classic markers of early, cognitive decline. Fletcher's presentation was devastating. He showed video depositions from supposed friends of mine, people I barely knew, claiming they had noticed my confusion at the wedding reception. He produced financial records showing investments I had made last year, framing them as reckless even though they were actually sound long-term positions. Then he brought up my arrest. Most alarming, Your Honor, is Mr. Castellano's recent behavior. This past Sunday, he was arrested for attempting to forge medical documents. The evidence shows he offered payment to a neurologist, Dr. Marcus Webb, for a fabricated evaluation claiming perfect mental health. This desperate, illegal act demonstrates exactly the kind of poor judgment we've been documenting. I felt myself getting angry. Bernard put a hand on my arm, warning me to stay calm. Fletcher continued for 20 minutes, building a comprehensive picture of a man losing his grip on reality, refusing to accept his limitations, and lashing out at family members trying to help him. Trevor Castellano doesn't want to hurt his father, Fletcher concluded. He loves his father, but love requires acknowledging reality. Mr. Castellano can no longer safely manage an $18 million asset. The trust should be dissolved, the property should be transferred to Trevor as the rightful heir, and appropriate care arrangements should be made for Mr. Castellano's remaining years. Thank you, Your Honor. He sat down. Judge Moreland made notes. Mr. Shaw, your response? Bernard stood. He looked small compared to Fletcher's commanding presence, but his voice was firm. Your Honor, this is a textbook case of elder financial abuse disguised as concern. The so-called evaluation by Dr. Harding was conducted without Mr. Castellano's knowledge or consent during a casual dinner. It has no clinical validity whatsoever. Bernard presented Dr. Webb's evaluation, explaining the comprehensive testing and the clear results. Dr. Webb is a board-certified neurologist with impeccable credentials. His evaluation shows conclusively that Mr. Castellano has no cognitive impairment. As for the arrest, those charges are completely fabricated. Dr. Webb confirms he received no threatening communications from my client. But Fletcher's team immediately attacked. Their second attorney stood and objected. Your Honor, Dr. Webb's evaluation is suspect given the circumstances under which it was obtained. Our forensic analysis shows text messages from Mr. Castellano's phone to Dr. Webb discussing payment for favorable results. The fact that Dr. Webb now denies this is simply self-preservation after criminal charges were filed. Judge Moreland held up a hand. I'll hear testimony from both doctors. Bailiff, please bring in Dr. Harding. Dr. Patricia Harding entered the courtroom. She was in her early 40s, professional and composed. She took the witness stand and was sworn in. Fletcher questioned her first, leading her through her credentials and her observations of me. She testified smoothly, describing how she had noticed my confusion during our dinner conversation, how I had repeated the same story twice, how I seemed uncertain about basic facts. All lies, but delivered with perfect credibility. Bernard cross-examined her, pointing out that she conducted no formal testing, used no standardized evaluation tools, and never informed me I was being assessed. Dr. Harding remained unruffled, insisting her clinical experience allowed her to recognize cognitive decline in informal settings. Then Trevor was called to testify. My son walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat down. He looked directly at me, and his eyes were filled with tears. Trevor, Fletcher said gently, can you describe your observations of your father over the past year? It's been hard to watch. Trevor said, his voice breaking. Dad forgets our conversations. I'll tell him something important, and 2 weeks later he has no memory of it. He tells the same stories over and over. Last month he got confused about what year it was. He thought my mom was still alive. He asked where she was. I half rose from my seat. That's a complete lie. Mr. Castellano, sit down, Judge Moreland said sharply. You'll have your opportunity to testify. Bernard pulled me back into my chair. Trevor continued, weaving a story of my supposed decline that sounded heartfelt and specific, but was entirely fiction. I love my dad, Trevor said, wiping his eyes. But I can't let him hurt himself anymore. He needs help. He needs protection from his own poor choices. I'm only doing this because I care about him. The performance was Oscar-worthy. Several people in the gallery looked moved. After Trevor's testimony, the medical expert battle continued. Dr. Webb testified about his evaluation of me, explaining the tests and results. But then, Courtney's team brought in their own neurologist, Dr. Raymond Foster, who testified that people with early cognitive decline often perform well on tests because they're trying to mask their symptoms. In fact, Dr. Foster said, the very perfection of Mr. Castellano's test results is suspicious. Real patients show some variation, some areas of weakness. His scores are almost too good, suggesting he may have been coached or that the evaluation was not conducted properly. It was twisted logic, but effective. I couldn't win, whether I passed the tests or failed them. The hearing went on for hours. By noon, Judge Moreland called a recess. I need to review the evidence, she said. We'll reconvene at 2 o'clock for my ruling. During the recess, Bernard and I sat on a bench outside the courtroom. Neither of us ate, though Bernard had brought sandwiches. How bad is it? I asked. Honestly? Very bad. Fletcher's presentation was extremely effective. Trevor's testimony was damaging, and the arrest record. Bernard shook his head. Even if the criminal charges are eventually dropped, the fact of the arrest supports their narrative. So I'm going to lose my home. I don't know. Judge Moreland seemed sympathetic to their argument, but she also seemed bothered by some of Dr. Harding's testimony. We have a chance. At 2 o'clock, we filed back into the courtroom. Judge Moreland took her seat and opened a folder. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented today. This is a preliminary hearing, so the standard of proof is lower than it would be at trial. The question before me is whether there is sufficient evidence to warrant dissolving the trust created by Dante Castellano. She looked directly at me. Mr. Castellano, I have serious concerns about the circumstances under which Dr. Harding's evaluation was conducted. However, when combined with the testimony of your son, the financial records showing questionable decisions, and most significantly, your recent arrest for attempting to influence medical testimony, I find there is sufficient cause to question your capacity to manage a substantial estate. My stomach dropped. Therefore, I am issuing a preliminary order dissolving the Dante Castellano Family Trust, effective immediately. The property known as 1725 Pacific Coast Highway shall be transferred to Trevor Castellano as sole heir. However, she held up a hand as Fletcher started to smile. I am giving the defense 72 hours to provide substantial additional evidence that the trust was validly created and that Mr. Castellano possesses full mental capacity. If such evidence is provided, I will reconsider this ruling. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Bernard immediately stood. Your Honor, we request 72 hours, Mr. Shaw. Not 1 minute more. She left the courtroom. Fletcher and his team were congratulating each other. Courtney embraced Trevor, whispering something in his ear. As people filed out, I saw Courtney approach the judge's clerk, a young man in his 20s. They spoke briefly. Then, when no one seemed to be watching, Courtney handed him a thick envelope. He glanced around nervously and slipped it into his briefcase. I grabbed Bernard's arm. Did you see that? See what? Courtney just gave the judge's clerk an envelope. Money. It has to be money. Bernard looked toward the front of the courtroom, but Courtney and the clerk were already walking in opposite directions. Are you certain? I saw it. She bribed him. Dante. That's a serious allegation. Judicial corruption. We'd need proof. I saw it with my own eyes, but even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. A desperate man making accusations with no evidence. And I had just 72 hours to find proof of the trust's validity and my mental competence, while also somehow proving that the judge was being paid off. We walked out of the courthouse into gray afternoon light. Reporters tried to approach us, but Bernard waved them away. "This is bad," he said quietly. "This is very, very bad. What do we do?" "I don't know, but we have until Friday morning to figure it out, or you lose everything." I returned to my house that evening, feeling like the walls were closing in. The preliminary ruling meant Courtney and Trevor now had a legal foothold. If I couldn't produce overwhelming evidence in 72 hours, the property would transfer to them. I tried calling old friends, people who had known me for years, and could testify to my mental competence. I reached Harold Brennan, a sailing buddy from my yacht club days. We had spent dozens of weekends on the water together. "Dante," he said carefully when he answered, "I heard about the court case. Harold, I need character witnesses. People who can testify that I'm mentally sharp, that this whole thing is fabricated." There was a long pause. "Courtney called me last week. She explained about your condition, said you might reach out, might seem normal, but that it's part of the disease. She said you're in denial." "Harold, there's no disease. She's lying. I want to believe you, but..." "Dante, she's a lawyer. She showed me medical records. And I have to be honest, at the club last month, you did seem a little confused. You asked me about my boat, but we'd already discussed it earlier that same day. I thought it was just you being forgetful, but now I wonder." I hung up. She had poisoned my relationships, planted seeds of doubt everywhere. I tried 5 more friends. 3 wouldn't take my calls. 2 were sympathetic but unwilling to get involved in legal matters. Courtney had been thorough in her preparation. By Wednesday night, I was alone again. Bernard was working from his office, trying to track down the original documentation for the trust's creation. But the attorney who had drafted it, Harold Weinstein, had died 5 years ago. His practice had been absorbed by a larger firm. Thursday morning, Bernard called with bad news. I contacted Weinstein's old firm. They said records older than 20 years are typically purged, per their retention policy. The files aren't available. "That's convenient timing," I said bitterly. "My thought exactly. I think Courtney or someone working for her got to them first. Destroyed the records or paid someone to lose them. So we have no proof the trust was properly created? We have the recorded documents with the county. But without the attorney's working files, we can't show the full context of why and how it was established. Fletcher will argue the trust was improperly created, possibly when you were under stress after Maria's death. We need something else." I spent Thursday trying to access my bank accounts to pay Bernard's fees. Half my accounts were frozen. Courtney had filed emergency motions claiming I might try to hide assets before the final ruling. I had less than $3,000 available across all my accounts. My credit cards started declining at gas stations and grocery stores. Bernard agreed to keep working on reduced fees, but I could see the strain on his face. He had a small practice. He couldn't afford to work for free indefinitely. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, looking at 25 years of memories. Photographs of Maria on the walls, Trevor's childhood artwork still displayed in the hallway. The kitchen where we had cooked family dinners, the deck where we had watched sunsets together. I was losing it all. Not just the property, but the tangible reminders of my life with Maria, of raising Trevor, of everything that mattered. At 2 a.m, I heard noise downstairs. I grabbed my phone and crept to the top of the stairs. Voices in the foyer. I descended quietly and saw lights on in the hallway. Courtney and Trevor stood by my front door with a locksmith. The locksmith was installing new deadbolts. "What are you doing?" I demanded. Courtney turned, unfazed by my presence. "Securing the property. Judge Moreland granted us permission to change the locks to prevent tampering or damage. I live here, for now." She handed me a new set of keys. "You're welcome to stay until the final ruling Friday morning. But the property is now under Trevor's legal authority, per the preliminary order." The locksmith finished his work and left. Trevor wouldn't look at me. Courtney smiled pleasantly. "Sleep well, Dante. Big day tomorrow. They left. I stood in my foyer, holding keys to locks that now felt like they belonged to someone else. Friday morning began with chest pains. Sharp, radiating pain in my left arm and pressure on my chest. I knew these symptoms. I called 911. The ambulance arrived within 12 minutes. Paramedics checked my vitals and determined I needed to go to the emergency room immediately. At Hoag Hospital, doctors ran an EKG and blood tests. The cardiologist, Dr. Stephen Park, explained I was having a cardiac event brought on by extreme stress. Your heart is under tremendous strain, he said. We need to keep you here for observation. You could have a full heart attack if we don't manage this. While I was in the emergency room, connected to monitors and IVs, Courtney was filing more motions. Bernard called me at noon with the update. She's requested an emergency conservatorship hearing, using your hospitalization as evidence that you can't care for yourself. Judge Moreland scheduled it for this afternoon at 4 o'clock. But that's when we're supposed to present our evidence about the trust. I know. We have 2 simultaneous hearings now. I can't be in both places at once. I felt like I was drowning. Every time I tried to surface, another wave pushed me under. Bernard, what do we do? I'm trying to get a continuance on the conservatorship hearing. But honestly, Dante, your hospitalization plays right into their hands. They're going to argue you're having a breakdown. I lay in the hospital bed, watching my heart rate spike on the monitor. The stress was literally killing me. That's what Courtney wanted. She wanted me dead or incapacitated so Trevor could inherit everything immediately. At 2:30, I got a phone call from an unexpected source. Maria's sister, Helen, calling from Seattle. Dante? I heard about what's happening. Trevor called me months ago asking questions about Maria's estate. Helen, I can't talk right now. I'm in the hospital. Just listen. Trevor wanted to know about Maria's life insurance policy. The small one from her employer. $25,000. He didn't know about it. I remembered that policy. Maria had taken it out when Trevor was in elementary school. When she died, the payout had gone into a savings account. I had used it as the initial funding for Trevor's trust. The insurance company might still have records, Helen said. Records showing how you used that money to establish the trust properly. I still have the policy paperwork in my files. Maria sent me a copy years ago. Hope flickered for the first time in days. Can you send it to me? I'll overnight it. But Dante, there's something else. Something I should have told you years ago. Trevor contacted me 5 years ago, right after your trust attorney Harold Weinstein died. He was asking about challenging your estate planning. I told him he was being greedy and we had a fight. We haven't spoken since. I should have warned you then. It's okay, Helen. No, it's not. I let family politics keep me silent while Trevor was planning this. I'm sorry. After Helen hung up, I called Bernard and told him about the insurance policy. He immediately contacted the insurance company's headquarters in Hartford, Connecticut. Being 3 hours ahead meant their offices were still open. Bernard begged for emergency duplicate records. Initially, company policy required 5 business days. But Bernard explained the assault on his office, the court deadline, the medical emergency. A sympathetic manager named Patricia Green agreed to expedite the request for same-day digital delivery. But it won't arrive until your time zone's noon tomorrow, she said. That's the absolute earliest. The hearing is at 9 in the morning, Bernard replied. I'm sorry. That's the best we can do. Bernard called me back with the news. We had found proof that the trust was legitimate, but it would arrive 3 hours too late. I'll request a continuance first thing in the morning, Bernard said. Based on the incoming evidence. Will Judge Moreland grant it? After what you saw Wednesday? Her taking money from Courtney's clerk? I doubt it. I lay in the hospital bed that night, unable to sleep, despite the sedatives the nurses gave me. Tomorrow morning, I would lose everything. My home, my assets, my independence. Courtney would have Trevor declared my conservator, giving her control over my life. I would become a prisoner in my own existence. At midnight, a nurse came in to check my vitals. She was young, in her late 20s, with kind eyes. Try to rest, Mr. Castellano, she said. Stress is your worst enemy right now. Easy for you to say, I replied. She adjusted my IV. My grandmother went through something similar. Her daughter's boyfriend convinced her daughter to try to get power of attorney. My grandmother fought back. She won. How? She found allies. People who believed in her when everyone else had doubts. Sometimes you can't fight alone. After she left, I thought about her words. Allies. I had Bernard, but he was stretched thin. Helen was helping, but she was in Seattle. Dr. Webb had testified for me, but his credibility was now questioned. Who else could help me? At 5 a.m, Bernard called. His voice was shaking. Dante, my office was broken into last night. My heart sank. What? Complete destruction. They smashed our computers, destroyed our filing cabinets, tore apart everything. My paralegal Jessica was working late. She was attacked. She's in the hospital with a head injury. Is she okay? She'll survive, but she's in intensive care. The police are investigating, but security footage was erased. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. It was Courtney. Probably. Or someone she hired. Dante, all our case files are gone. Everything we had prepared for this morning. I'm trying to reconstruct from memory and from what I have at home. But what about the insurance policy documents Helen was sending? Overnight delivery to my office. The package is probably sitting in the rubble right now. The walls closed in completely. They had taken everything. Destroyed every piece of evidence. Hurt an innocent person who was just doing her job. They've crossed into violent crime, I said. This isn't just fraud anymore. I know. I've called the police, filed reports. But the hearing is in 4 hours, and we have nothing. I hung up and stared at the hospital ceiling. The cardiac monitors beeped steadily. Outside my window, Friday morning light was starting to break through the darkness. This was it. The end. Courtney had won. At 5:30 in the morning, I signed myself out of the hospital against medical advice. Dr. Park tried to stop me. Mr. Castellano, you're at serious risk of cardiac arrest. The stress you're under is life-threatening. I have to be in court at 9, I said. If I'm not there, I lose everything anyway. Bernard picked me up at 6. We drove to his office to survey the damage and see if anything could be salvaged. The scene was devastating. His office looked like a tornado had hit it. Computers smashed beyond repair. Filing cabinets upended, papers scattered and shredded. The safe where he kept important documents had been blown open with some kind of explosive. Jessica was sitting right there, Bernard said, pointing to a desk. They hit her from behind. She never saw it coming. Police were still processing the scene. A detective named Martinez took our statements. Whoever did this was a professional, Detective Martinez said. They knew how to disable the security system, how to erase digital footage, how to crack a safe. This wasn't random vandalism. It's connected to my court case, I said. My son and his wife are trying to steal my property. They've been systematically destroying evidence. Detective Martinez wrote everything down. We'll investigate, but realistically, this kind of case takes weeks to build. If you have a hearing this morning, I can't help you in time. Bernard and I left at 7:30 and drove to the courthouse. We had no physical evidence, no files, no documentation. Bernard had a legal pad with notes he had reconstructed from memory. That was it. At 8:45, we entered courtroom 6. Courtney sat at her table with the same 3 attorneys. Trevor was in the gallery, looking nervous. The reporters were back, more of them this time. Judge Moreland entered at exactly 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is the continuation of case number PR-2025-4487. Mr. Shaw, you were given 72 hours to provide substantial evidence supporting the validity of the trust and your client's mental capacity. What do you have to present? Bernard stood. Your Honor, we had prepared extensive documentation, but my office was broken into and burglarized last night. All our files were destroyed. My paralegal was assaulted and is currently in intensive care at Hoag Hospital. Judge Moreland looked genuinely surprised. That's terrible. Do you have a police report? Yes, Your Honor. Bernard handed up the report. Case number 2025-08642. Detective Martinez is the investigating officer. Fletcher immediately stood. Your Honor, while we sympathize with Mr. Shaw's difficulties, This sounds like a convenient excuse to avoid providing evidence. We'd like to suggest that this alleged break-in was staged for insurance fraud and to gain sympathy from the court. That's outrageous, Bernard said. Is it? Fletcher pulled out photographs. These photos show Mr. Shaw's office. The damage appears theatrical, deliberately excessive, almost as if someone wanted it to look dramatic for insurance purposes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were twisting even the violent assault on an innocent woman, into part of their narrative. Judge Moreland studied the photos. Mr. Shaw, do you have any evidence at all to present this morning? Your Honor, we have insurance company records being sent from Hartford, Connecticut. They prove the trust was funded properly and established legally, but they won't arrive until noon. We're here now, at 9 o'clock, as scheduled. I gave you 72 hours. Time is up. Your Honor, I'm requesting a brief continuance until this afternoon. Just 3 hours. Judge Moreland shook her head. My schedule is full this afternoon. And frankly, Mr. Shaw, I've heard enough excuses. You had ample time to prepare. The fact that you're claiming mysterious break-ins and missing evidence suggests your case is not as strong as you claimed. Fletcher stood again. Your Honor, we'd like to present additional evidence supporting our request for immediate conservatorship. Mr. Castellano was hospitalized last night with what doctors described as a stress-induced cardiac event. He signed himself out against medical advice this morning. This demonstrates exactly the kind of poor judgment and inability to care for himself that we've been documenting. I had a panic attack because they're trying to steal my house, I shouted, unable to contain myself anymore. Mr. Castellano, control yourself or I'll have you removed, Judge Moreland warned. Bernard put a hand on my shoulder. Your Honor, may I call my client to testify? If you wish, though I don't see how it will change anything. I took the witness stand. Bernard led me through my testimony. I explained how the trust was created after Maria's death, using her life insurance money. I explained how Trevor had been well provided for his entire life. I explained how Courtney had systematically destroyed evidence and manipulated the legal system. But Fletcher's cross-examination destroyed me. He brought up the arrest, the hospitalization, my outbursts in court, the convenient timing of the office break-in. He made me sound paranoid, delusional, and desperate. No further questions, Fletcher said, looking satisfied. Trevor was called to testify again. He gave another performance about loving his father but needing to protect him. He cried on cue. The reporters in the back row were taking notes frantically. Judge Moreland was preparing to rule. I could see it in her posture, and how she was organizing her notes. Based on all testimony and evidence presented, she began, I find. The courtroom doors opened. A woman in her 30s entered, dressed in a sharp gray suit and carrying a briefcase. She walked down the center aisle with authority. Everyone turned to look. Excuse me, Your Honor, she said. I'm Assistant District Attorney Rachel Montgomery, with the Orange County District Attorney's Public Integrity Unit. I need to request an immediate recess. There are urgent matters related to this case that the court needs to address. Judge Moreland's face went pale. What is this about? I'd prefer to discuss it in chambers, Your Honor, with all counsel present. Judge Moreland looked trapped. Very well. 30-minute recess. Counsel, please join me in chambers. The judge left through her side door. ADA Montgomery, Fletcher and his team, Bernard and I followed. In chambers, Judge Moreland sat behind her desk, trying to maintain composure. Miss Montgomery, what is the meaning of this interruption? Rachel Montgomery opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. Your Honor, my unit has been investigating you for judicial corruption for the past 6 months. We have evidence of multiple bribes taken in exchange for favorable rulings. Your case with Courtney Castellano appeared during our surveillance. She played an audio recording. Courtney's voice was clear. 50,000 now. Another 50 when you rule in our favor. The old man won't know what hit him. Judge Moreland's voice responded. How do I know this can't be traced back to me? I'm a lawyer, Patricia. I know how to hide money. Just make sure the ruling dissolves that trust. The recording played for another minute. It was damning, undeniable evidence. Judge Moreland was shaking. This is entrapment. No, Your Honor. It's evidence. We also have bank records showing $50,000 transferred to an offshore account in your name. We have video footage of your clerk accepting payment from Mrs. Castellano. We have documentation of 13 other cases where you accepted bribes to rule in favor of wealthy clients. Fletcher and his team looked stunned. One of the junior attorneys quietly stood and left the room, clearly wanting no part of what was coming. We also have evidence related to the break-in at Mr. Shaw's office, Montgomery continued. She pulled out more documents. DNA found at the scene matches Courtney Castellano's brother, Marcus Hayes. Mr. Hayes has a background in computer security and has been arrested twice previously for cybercrimes. He's currently being questioned. She turned to Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher, did you know your client orchestrated a violent assault? Fletcher was visibly shaken. Absolutely not, if I had known. We have the original video of Mrs. Castellano and Trevor Castellano planning this scheme 2 years ago, before they claimed to have met. We have evidence of Dr. Patricia Harding being paid to write a false psychological evaluation. We have proof that the text messages used to arrest Mr. Dante Castellano were fabricated using cloned phone technology. Montgomery laid it all out systematically. The entire conspiracy. Every lie. Every crime. Your Honor, Montgomery said, you're under arrest for corruption and bribery. You have the right to remain silent. 2 federal agents entered the chambers and handcuffed Judge Moreland. She was crying now, her career and life collapsing in real time. Mrs. Castellano is also being arrested, Montgomery said, for fraud, conspiracy, bribery, assault, and elder abuse. Mr. Fletcher, your firm may want to reconsider your representation. We returned to the courtroom. Federal agents entered and approached Courtney. She stood, her face going white. Courtney Castellano, you're under arrest, one agent said. That's when Trevor moved. He pulled a gun from inside his jacket. The courtroom erupted in screams. People dove under benches. The agents drew their weapons. Stay back, Trevor shouted. He grabbed Courtney and pressed the gun to her head. This is her fault. She planned everything. She manipulated me. Trevor, put the gun down, one agent said calmly. I didn't want this. She promised me money, promised me freedom, told me my dad was keeping me poor. Trevor was backing toward the door, dragging Courtney with him. It was all her idea. You lying coward, Courtney screamed. You came to me. You wanted the money. You said your father deserved to lose everything. They were turning on each other now, both desperate to escape blame. Trevor's gun hand was shaking. His finger was on the trigger. I stood up slowly. Every agent in the room was shouting at me to get down, to take cover. Bernard tried to pull me back, but I walked forward, moving toward my son. Trevor, I said quietly, stay away from me. Trevor, look at me. He did. His eyes were wild with fear and rage and desperation. The boy I had raised was gone, replaced by this terrified stranger. I love you, I said. No matter what you've done, no matter how far you've fallen, I love you. But you need to stop now. Don't hurt anyone else. Don't hurt yourself. She ruined me, Trevor said, tears streaming down his face. She told me I was weak for being poor. She showed me all that money sitting in your trust and convinced me I deserved it. I believed her. I destroyed everything. For money I never needed. I know, I said, and we'll deal with that. But right now, you need to put down the gun. We can get you help. Therapy. Treatment. A second chance. But only if you stop before anyone gets hurt. Trevor's hand wavered. The gun drifted away from Courtney's head. If you shoot someone, there's no coming back from that, I said. Your mother wouldn't want this, Trevor. Maria wouldn't want you to throw your whole life away. At the mention of Maria, Trevor broke. He released Courtney and dropped the gun. It clattered on the floor. He fell to his knees, sobbing. Agents immediately moved in. They cuffed both Trevor and Courtney. Courtney was screaming threats and accusations. Trevor was silent, broken. I stood there watching my son being led away in handcuffs, and I knew that even though I had won the legal battle, I had lost something far more precious. The courtroom cleared slowly. Reporters were being held back by security while agents processed the scene. Bernard stood beside me, both of us shell-shocked by what had just happened. ADA Montgomery approached us. "Mr. Castellano, I'm sorry you had to experience this, but your nightmare is over." "How long have you been investigating?" I asked. "Judge Moreland has been on our radar for 8 months. We had evidence of corruption in other cases. When Courtney Castellano's scheme appeared during our surveillance, we saw an opportunity to gather more evidence while also protecting an innocent victim." "The anonymous email I received," I said. "The video that was deleted from my computer. That was you?" Montgomery nodded. "We needed to test whether you would try to use inadmissible evidence obtained illegally. When you didn't, when you continued to fight through legitimate channels despite having access to proof of the conspiracy, it demonstrated your mental competence and your integrity. That helped us." "Your paralegal, Jessica," Bernard said. "The attack on my office. Was that part of your investigation?" "No, that was real. Courtney's brother, Marcus Hayes, acted on his own initiative. He's been charged with assault, breaking and entering, and destruction of property. Jessica is expected to make a full recovery." Montgomery gathered her materials. "The charges against you, Mr. Castellano, for fraud and attempted bribery are being dropped immediately. Judge Moreland's ruling dissolving your trust is vacated. The property remains in the trust structure exactly as it was. You're free to go home." Over the following days, the legal aftermath unfolded. Judge Patricia Moreland faced federal corruption charges involving 17 cases where she had taken bribes. Her entire judicial career was under review. She would spend years in prison. Courtney Castellano was charged with 23 counts, including fraud, conspiracy, bribery, assault, and elder abuse. She tried to claim Trevor had forced her participation, but the evidence showed clearly that she had masterminded the entire scheme. Her law license was revoked. She faced up to 30 years in prison. Dr. Patricia Harding was arrested for fraud and practicing psychology under false pretenses. She lost her license, and her practice closed. Several of her past evaluations were being re-examined for signs of similar manipulation. Courtney's brother, Marcus Hayes, faced charges for the attack on Bernard's office. His DNA had been found at the scene, and security footage from a nearby building showed him entering the building that night. He accepted a plea deal. 8 years in prison. Judge Moreland's clerk, the young man who had accepted Courtney's envelope, cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. He testified about 6 other cases where he had facilitated bribes. He received 2 years, probation, and community service. Trevor faced the most complicated situation. As Ada Montgomery explained to me during a meeting at the district attorney's office, Trevor's crimes were serious, but his breakdown in court had shown genuine remorse. "The gun wasn't loaded," Montgomery told me. "He never intended to hurt anyone. It was a desperate, stupid act by someone who finally understood the magnitude of his mistakes." Trevor accepted a plea deal. 7 years in prison for fraud, conspiracy, and weapons charges. The prosecution dropped the attempted kidnapping charge in recognition of his cooperation and remorse. 2 weeks after the hearing, I visited Trevor in county jail. He was waiting for transfer to state prison. We sat across from each other in a visitation room, separated by plexiglass, speaking through phones. Trevor looked terrible. He had lost weight, his face was gaunt, and his eyes were hollow. "Dad," he said, and his voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I destroyed everything. I destroyed us." "Tell me how it started," I said. "The truth." Trevor took a shaky breath. "I met Courtney at a bar, not at a conference. 5 years ago, I was complaining about money, about how I felt stuck in my life. She asked about my family. When I mentioned you owned property in Newport Beach, her whole demeanor changed. She started asking detailed questions. She targeted you because of me." "Yes." "She researched everything. Found out about the trust, about the property value, about Mom's death. Then she started dating me. She was patient, spent years getting close to me, understanding our relationship, finding the weaknesses." "What weaknesses?" Trevor looked ashamed. "My resentment. I did resent you, Dad. Not because you did anything wrong, but because I felt like a failure compared to you. You built a successful business, married Mom, own this incredible property. I'm 34, and living in a cramped apartment, working a job I hate, drowning in student debt. Courtney took that normal frustration and twisted it into rage. She's a predator, I said. She is. But I let her do it. I chose to believe her lies because they made me feel justified. She convinced me that taking the house wasn't stealing, it was claiming what should have been mine all along. She made me feel entitled to your wealth. We sat in silence for a moment. I said terrible things to you, Trevor continued. I told you I didn't care if you died. Dad, I didn't mean that. I was so deep in Courtney's manipulation that I lost sight of everything Mom taught me. Everything you taught me. Your mother would be heartbroken, I said. I know. Trevor wiped his eyes. I think about her every day in here. About how disappointed she'd be. She raised me better than this. What happens now? I asked. I serve my time. 7 years. I'll be 41 when I get out. I'm attending therapy sessions here, working through what happened, trying to understand how I let someone twist me into a monster. You're not a monster, Trevor. You made terrible choices, but you're not beyond redemption. Do you really believe that? I thought about it carefully. I believe people can change. I believe you can learn from this and become better. But you have a long road ahead. Trevor nodded. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Everything I did, every lie I told, every scheme I participated in, it was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. I betrayed you. I betrayed Mom's memory. I betrayed myself. I do forgive you, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger would poison me. Your mother taught me that. She always believed in second chances. Trevor started crying. Thank you. That means more than you know. But forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences, I continued. You'll serve your time. You'll do the work to change. And when you get out, if you've truly changed, we'll talk about what comes next. I understand. Before I left, I told him something important. I'm adding you back to the trust. Not because you've earned it, but because I choose hope over bitterness. When you're released, if you've shown genuine growth and change, you'll have resources to rebuild your life. But there will be conditions. Therapy. Financial counseling. Proof that you've learned these lessons. Trevor looked stunned. Why would you do that after everything? Because you're my son. And because your mother would want me to believe in you, even when you've given me every reason not to. The months passed. My frozen bank accounts were released. My reputation was restored through extensive media coverage of the arrests and the conspiracy. Friends and business associates reached out to apologize for doubting me. Helen, Maria's sister, flew down from Seattle. We had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the harbor. We talked about Maria, about family, about the years we had spent estranged over trivial disputes. I should have stayed in touch, Helen said. If I had, maybe I would have noticed what Trevor was planning. Maybe I could have warned you sooner. You helped when it mattered most, I replied. The insurance policy records were crucial. You came through. We agreed to rebuild our relationship. Family was too precious to waste on old grudges. Bernard's office was repaired. His paralegal Jessica recovered from her injuries and returned to work. The firm received a settlement from Courtney's seized assets that covered all damages and more. I established the Maria Castellano Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention. Using my experience and my platform, I began advocating for stronger protections for older adults facing financial exploitation. The foundation offered free legal advice, connected victims with resources, and worked to reform laws that made elder abuse easier to commit and harder to prosecute. 6 months after the hearing, I hosted a fundraiser at my house. The mansion was filled with advocates, attorneys, social workers, and survivors of elder abuse. More than 200 people came. We raised $400,000 for the foundation's work. Standing on my deck, looking out at the ocean and the crowd of people inside working to protect vulnerable elders, I realized something important. The house wasn't just a building anymore. It wasn't just an asset or a symbol of wealth. It had become a tool for good, a place where real change could happen. 1 year after Trevor's imprisonment, I received a letter from him. He wrote about the therapy sessions he was attending, the college courses he was taking through the prison education program, the work he was doing to understand his choices. He included a copy of an essay he had written for a class on ethics and personal responsibility. The essay was titled, "How Greed Destroyed My Family and What I'm Learning from the Ruins." It was honest, painful, and showed genuine reflection. He wasn't making excuses. He was taking full responsibility. I wrote back. We began corresponding regularly. Slowly, carefully, we started to rebuild some kind of relationship. It would never be what it was before. Trust, once shattered, takes years to repair. But we were trying. The foundation grew. We helped dozens of families facing similar situations. We lobbied for legislative changes. We trained law enforcement on recognizing elder financial abuse. The work gave my life new purpose. I thought often about the lessons I had learned through this nightmare, about how wealth without wisdom is a burden, an invitation for predators to strike, about how family bonds require constant nurturing, honest communication, and the courage to address resentments before they metastasize into something poisonous. I learned that trust must be balanced with verification, that loving someone doesn't mean being blind to their flaws or their capacity for wrong choices. That material possessions mean nothing if you lose your integrity to protect them. Most importantly, I learned that forgiveness is not weakness. It's a choice to refuse bitterness, to maintain your humanity even when others lose theirs. Forgiving Trevor didn't mean forgetting what he did or pretending it didn't matter. It meant choosing to believe that people can grow, can change, can become better than their worst moments. 2 years after the hearing, I stood on the same terrace where I had first felt my world collapsing. But now the view looked different. The house was filled with people working for a cause that mattered. The foundation was making real impact. Trevor was making progress in prison, slowly earning back a fraction of what he had lost. I thought about Maria and hoped she would be proud of how I had chosen to respond to betrayal, not with vengeance, not with bitterness, but with purpose and hope. The sunset painted the sky, orange and purple. The ocean stretched to the horizon, vast and eternal. I had almost lost everything, but in fighting back, in refusing to let hate consume me, I had found something more valuable than property. I had kept my humanity intact. And in a world where greed and betrayal seemed to win, that was its own kind of victory. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced a situation where someone close to you betrayed your trust? How did you handle it? Did you choose forgiveness or distance? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else facing a similar struggle. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video. It helps others who need to hear this message find it. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories about resilience, justice, and the human capacity to overcome even the darkest betrayals. And share this with someone who might be facing their own battle. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that even when the world seems darkest, even when the people you love most turn against you, integrity matters. Character matters. And choosing to be better than your circumstances is always possible. May you find the strength to face your challenges with courage, the wisdom to protect what truly matters, and the grace to forgive when the time is right.